Hi, it's Lauren. Welcome back to my craft room. It's the 25th of the month, so we're going to do some Christmas inspiration using Pretty Pink Posh. I have a few different stamp sets here and a stencil. I'm going to start with stenciling my background because I wanted to add some snowflakes to this gray striped pattern paper, and I'm only using the B stencil. I just want a few shiny snowflakes on my background. So I'm going to be using a glitter glaze from Brutus Monroe, and this is Fallen Snow. And it really is just a clear glaze with some kind of iridescent glitter in it. So I'm just adding this through the snowflakes, again, just using the B of the three stencils in this layered snowflake set. Once I have all of the snowflakes covered, I'm just going to take the excess and put it back into the jar. And then I will go wash my stencil, but you can see here those pretty snowflakes. It's just adding a nice subtle background to this pattern paper. So while that's drying, we'll jump over into our stamping. This is the Poinsettia Corners stamp set from Pretty Pink Posh, and I stamped it twice, and as you can see right there, I left in my little boo-boo. I guess my paper moved when I went to stamp it a second time, so I tried again, and here I have much cleaner lines, so I just flipped my paper over and stamped again. I'm grabbing my coloring guides because I know I have a really pretty red and green combo already from my color and chat this month. So I'm just going to grab my kind of present tree and sack here from that cute Happy Santa stamp set, and I'm going to use my coloring guide to color in my images. So I'm using my DR4 2 and 1 to color in the red leaves of my poinsettia. And then I'm going to grab GY2 to color in the flowers in the center of the poinsettia. And then for the green leaves of my poinsettia as well as the holly leaves, I'm going to use my AG5, 3, and 2. And my holly berries will follow that same red color, the DR4, 2, and 1. So I'm just going to show you how I colored in just one of each. So with the red, the yellow, and then I'm using my greens here on the leaves. But I'm going to color everything off camera and come back with everything ready to go for die cutting. I also used a gel pen to add in some highlights. I actually have the coordinating dies for the stamp set, so I'm just going to apply the dies around each of the images, and I'm using my scrapbook.com mint tape to help keep them in place as I run it through my Gemini Junior. And then I'm going to pull off all of the tape and save it because I save all my mint tape until it no longer sticks. And then I will take out all of my images. I really love how vibrant this red color combo is using my Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers. So now let's jump over to the sentiment. I'm using my Pear Blossom Press Black Perfect Sentiment cardstock. And again, my stamping was weird on this one. I'm going to leave it in just so you can see how I recover from weird stamping incidents, just like my poinsettias. So I have these two different sentiment stamp sets. I have the holiday script stamp set, and I also have the coordinating dies, and then the holiday sentiments stamp set. And so I'm just kind of combining the two together to make a longer sentiment. So I'm using Merry Christmas from the scripts, holiday script stamp set. And then I'm using the Wishing You A from the holiday sentiment stamp set. So I like that these fonts are similar. They're, I think, the same font, except I think the Christmas is a little bit bigger. But that way they coordinate really well together. And so I'm going to stamp this onto this black cardstock with some embossing ink, and I'm going to use white embossing powder. So I'm adding my anti-static powder onto my black cardstock, and then I stamped my sentiment, and I only stamped it once using this embossing ink, and I don't think I got enough ink on my paper because when I go to add the white embossing powder, it doesn't stick in most of the spots. And I don't know why. I don't know if it just sat too long or, again, I didn't put enough ink, but I contemplated stamping it twice and I didn't, and obviously here is when I'm regretting that because it's not turning out, and I don't know why. So I'm going to put away my embossing powder and I'm just going to grab a brush and brush off all of that embossing powder onto my glass mat. And then I have a little mini vacuum that I got on Amazon that I just wanted to show because it's so cute. And I'm just vacuuming up all of that embossing powder. So I'm going to just try again. So this time I flip over the cardstock again because I don't want to have to worry about dealing with the remnants of any embossing ink, and I'm going to use my anti-static powder, and then I stamped it twice, and as you can see here now, obviously it's stamped a lot better and the ink is sticking to the embossing powder. So I'm heating up my heat gun while I put away the embossing powder, and then I melted down the embossing powder onto the cardstock, and once it's cooled down, I'm just using a Swiffer dust cloth to pick up the excess anti-static powder. I have a little mini paper trimmer and I'm just trimming around the words wishing you a and Christmas, so they are really thin strips just around the words. And then like I said, I have the coordinating die for Mary, so I will cut out the Mary sentiment and then run that through my die cut machine. I'm going for really bold lines and colors on this card, so that's why I decided to stamp with white embossing powder onto black cardstock, and why I chose to use black as my ink for coloring in my images. I know I've been kind of on a pastel kick if you follow me on Instagram, but this time I really wanted a bold red card. So now that everything is ready to go, my background is dry now. I'm just going to use my paper trimmer to trim this down to 4 by 5 1/4. So just kind of randomly cutting 2 of the sides, and then here's where I'll line it up so it's exactly 4 by 5 1/4. And so that way when I glue it onto my background, my card base, the background will have a bit of a border showing that white card base. So now I have all my images and my sentiment, and I can start kind of putting my card together how I want it to look. So I have my poinsettia corners in 2 of the corners of my background, and I have my Mary, and then I'm using that to kind of guide where I'm putting the rest of my sentiment. And then I'm just going to use one of these small poinsettias and this little holly extra to hide under Christmas and just to add a little bit more red to the card. And once I'm happy with the layout, I'm using some thin foam adhesive. This is from Thermoweb, and I'm going to use that to attach the 2 poinsettia corners. So just trimming down some of that adhesive roll, peeling off the release paper, and then putting it into the corner, the top left for this one, just like I had in my layout, and then I repeat that for the other corner. Now because I use a thinner foam adhesive, I'm going to use a more thicker foam adhesive to attach my sentiment now. These are just some foam adhesive strips that I use for shaker cards mostly, but I'm just going to use them so that way my sentiment kind of sticks out a little bit more than my poinsettias, just to give it some, different types of depth and perception on the card. So I attached it behind Mary. I'm going to use my grid here to help me center that as much as possible. And then I will repeat that process with my strips. So I'm doing the wishing you a, but before I attach down Christmas, I'm just going to use some wet adhesive to glue down those 2 little small images right onto the background. And this will overlap, or I guess the Christmas sentiment will overlap over these 2 little pieces. So just using my tweezers to help me get them in the spot that I want. And then I will add that Christmas sentiment by peeling off the release paper and attaching it to the card. And again, all 3 pieces of my sentiment are using that little bit thicker of a foam adhesive. So now that the card is done, I'm loving it. I think it's very beautiful and elegant looking. I'm going to grab my white card base. This is 110 ultra thick Nina cardstock. And then I'm going to use some strong adhesive to attach my background to the card base. It does have a teensy tiny bit of warping because of that glitter glaze. So I want it to be nice and adhered to my background or my card base. Here's a final look at my card. I love the subtle shine of the snowflakes, but I really just love those bold poinsettias along with the bold sentiment on this card. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!